Welcome into the college football edition of Bet the Edge. I'm Brad Thomas here with Vaughn and Eric Froton. And before I ask the fellas their takeaways from last week, I'm going to say two words: Roll Tide. Vaughn,
Nope.
how did last week treat you? Any takeaways, my man?
I mean, that was a minus 1,000 favorite for thing you to say to open the show up. I fully expected that. Yeah, I wanted to say, hat tip, clap it up for us because mainly you, Brad, you hit on Jalen Milroe saying you got to go get a Heisman bet on him because he's probably going to be the favorite. They beat Georgia. That's exactly what happened. Game of the year, no doubt about it. But also hat tip to Eric, who has Travis Hunter, number 2 or number 3 favorite on all the sports books. And of course, I gave out Nico or Garrett Nussmeier. Nico looks a lot better than Nussmeier right now. But I just want to say, getting those Heisman bets in your pocket before the biggest games of the season are definitely key. And Cam Ward, sorry to say it, but your luck's fading away, my man. Let's go Milroe. Let's go Hunter.
Yeah, can't argue with that. Absolutely. And as discussed, man, I was on the wrong side of that with Carson Beck. I'm sorry, Brett. Brad and I didn't bet any beef on that, but I feel like I owe him in spirit. There was a great call by Mr. Thomas, and nothing but respect. But on my side, I had to catch up with that extemporaneously, a little bit post game, because I was at both USC Wisconsin, which USC was down 21-10 at half, rallied to go and win that game. That was really exciting. Got to see Jacoby Lane catch a touchdown pretty much right in my lap and start dancing for me. So I appreciated that from Mr. Lane. And then Oregon just putting it on a beleaguered UCLA team. Didn't even score a touchdown, UCLA, on offense. It came from, ironically, Braylon Addison, who is now a safety for UCLA, who was a wide receiver for Oregon for years and years. He picked off Dylan Gabriel, brought it back for a touchdown. He was the only guy to score a touchdown for UCLA. So it was an eventful, Big Ten doubleheader in LA. And, it was, I'm excited for this weekend. Got another big game to go to as well.
That's exciting. Tell us what game you're going to go to.
Oh, well, it's a college fantasy matchup du jour. Everyone's talking about it. A Friday night tilt, of course, in Las Vegas. Don't worry, Vaughn. I'll be back at Stadium Swim on Saturday, celebrating as we did for your momentous victory in the Circa contest. Congratulations again, Vaughn. Thanks for inviting me. But I will be at UCLA Syracuse. Get the points ready. Going to be an epic tilt in the pre-Sluka Bowl.
Wait, you said
Sluka Bowl.
I know he meant. Yeah, I know he meant UNLV.
Oh, excuse me, I meant UNLV. All those acronyms. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, guys. UNLV. Yeah, UCLA in Vegas. UNLV, Syracuse. A strange non-con game in Week 6, but hey, we'll take it. What a great matchup between a couple of potent.
Kyle McCord passing yards over. Is that your?
Yeah, I think you have to consider UNLV to make the playoff ticket there because they beat Syracuse. You have to imagine they're probably going to run the table there, which would be pretty. I think the price is like maybe 18-1, 8-1, one of those two prices. But let's get into the games. The first game we're going to talk about: number 9 Missouri at number 25 Texas A&M. Texas A&M surprisingly a 2.5 point favorite. Total set at 48.5. The money. Go ahead and talk about this game before we take it away with our bets.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked too to see Missouri as a 2.5 point underdog here, and it made me, think maybe there's an angle here for Texas A&M. But I think the angles are really for the Aggies to win this game. It's all on their defense, right, Brad? I mean, we were looking at Connor Wegman's status. We don't believe in the A&M offense. We still have hard feelings towards that home loss against Notre Dame. But since then, I still don't think that offense has gotten much better or found a clear identity to make them a clear favorite over Missouri. This is a spot where I think Missouri's worth a sprinkle, whether it's on the spread or the money line. But if you're looking for an angle, I think that first quarter under 10.5 would probably be the way I'd play this game. Get in and get out on it. I don't feel like A&M is going to run down the field and score a touchdown on them. They haven't done that primarily in their games. But that Missouri offense, especially Luther Burden, is very scary. So that's the only thing that I'm a little bit scared of. But I like the first quarter under, and I lean Missouri. How about you, Eric?
Yeah, well, I'm not scared of Luther Burden either. In fact, I happen to like his over. He's listed at a very reasonable 68.5 receiving yards. Now, over the past 2 games, keep in mind, Missouri played Vanderbilt last game. He caught 6 of 9 targets for 76 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the game before that against BC, another pretty competitive contest, 6 of 8 for 117 and a touch. I feel like this is kind of artificially suppressed because in the first 2 games of the season, they didn't really use him. They played Murray State and Buffalo. So they kind of said, all right, well, we have our first round caliber wide receiver we're going to chill out with. But, as we said, in the past 2 games, we've seen that usage take an uptick into what we've kind of been used to seeing for Luther Burden. So I just think at 68.5 receiving yards, you're playing against Texas A&M, who, while they do a good job on a down and out basis, they are susceptible to big play. 60th in EPA per pass. I'm not worried about Luther Burden getting double-digit targets and catching at least 6 passes. He's going to clear that 68.5 receiving yards.
I like it. This game was funny to me because like I said, I was shocked that Missouri was the dog in this. And then I went back and I looked at Missouri and I was like, in what world can we say that on a neutral field, Missouri will be a 5-point dog, a 1-point dog, excuse me, in this? I think it was incorrect. When I look at both sides of the tape here, just from a numbers perspective, Missouri, I think, clears Texas A&M in either category, in any category, right? Like offensive success rate, we know that the Aggies think they're like 81st versus 13th for Missouri. Defensive success rate, that's where they hang their hat, but only 51st in the country, where Missouri is 4th. And I know the numbers are slightly skewed, right? But you take an EPA margin and then it's drastically different as well there, which is a little bit more of a balanced look than just taking scoring offense, scoring defense. When we look at Missouri, talent level in terms of their offense, defense, I think they have the advantage as well. And if we look at the beginning of the season when Notre Dame played Texas A&M, we thought they were going to protect Kyle Field. They didn't. Notre Dame came in there and beat them. And I think this Missouri team is much more talented than this Texas A&M team. You talked about Luther Burden. I also want to talk about how talented and how much of a nice fill-in for Cody Schrader Nate Noel has been. Nate Noel has been phenomenal. 441 yards on 69 carries. He's averaging 6.4 carries per game. I'm taking his over rush yards. The number's playable at 71.5. The reason I'm taking his over is 2 things, right? They're going to want to run the ball. They're like 64th in rush rate over expected, running the ball close to 53% of the time. And in this game, even if it's a negative script, Texas A&M, I don't believe, is talented enough to go up by multiple scores, go up by 2 touchdowns, so they can continue to run their offense, right? If you look at the game where they played against Notre Dame, Jeremiah Love, who I think was in a worse position than Nate Noel, was able to rip off for 91 in that game. So for me, I just think that what's going to happen in this game. I don't care if it's Wegman, Reed. I like Missouri to cover the 2.5, and I like Nate Noel to get his shine on the ground at 71.5 rushing yards. That's my looks for the game. Let's any rebuttals before we move over to the next one?
Yeah,
I like that Noel line. I like Noel.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. I think if Wegman is rolled in this game, I think Missouri probably has a better shot to probably win this game too. You get a guy coming off an injury, knocking a little bit of rust off, because Marcel Reed, true, he's freshman. It's been pretty good with his legs for the most part. Hasn't been forced to throw too much. So, I'd like Missouri even more if Wegman's rolled in this game.
All right, let's move over. Number 8, Miami, 10.5-point favorites, traveling to Cal, their first major road trip. I thought it was pretty funny how long this team has to travel, their equipment bus, the players by plane. I'm going to start things off. I'm going to go Cam Ward, over 296.5 passing yards. Cam Ward has hit this number in every single game. We were on Damian Martinez last game, and I want to say that I was lucky, really, really lucky to cash that bet, because they did not want to run the ball, and they stuck true, regardless if they were playing against a poor run defense, to their identity. 6th in rush rate over expected means they throw the ball the 6th most in the country. Well, their success, 4th offensive success rate, 4th in EPA per drop pack. But what's really important about Cam Ward that I really liked, 9.6 ADOT with a 77.5 adjusted completion percentage. Not only is he throwing the ball, he's throwing the ball downfield, and he's completing a lot of passes. So for me, it's Cam Ward passing yards. Let's go to you, Vaughn. Any leans for this game?
Yeah, I mean, are you going to state your opinion on whether or not that was a touchdown or out of bounds, incomplete pass on the Hail Mary? Come on, man.
I think you have to call it an incomplete pass, right? Like, I don't know how they called it a touchdown on the field, first and foremost. Like, terrible angle.
Touchdown. That is an
Listen, I bet Miami
touchdown.
live, so my wallet says it was no touchdown.
Eric, I mean, come on. He clearly had it, and when he was laying on top of somebody else, the other guy reached in and was trying to rip the ball out. Like, he was down for a solid second and a half, 2 seconds before.
Ball was still kind of moving in his hands.
That's
Yeah.
haters, man. You guys hate having a good time.
Actually stopped. But I get it. Look, your point is valid. I mean, you could. No, I'm not going to blame you either way, but it does show that, look, Miami was a very, very subjective call away from losing that game. And then here they are traveling across the country to Cal. They just saved their bacon, should have lost. And they're going to deal with, obviously, a defensive-oriented team. They're not particularly potent on offense, and that's being very kind. But, they haven't run the ball to the extent I think they will against Miami. And a lot of this has to do with they're not a good pass team anyways, Cal, but Miami's an exceptional pass defense. I mean, their interception rate, they rank 8th in the country with a 5.5% interception rate. And you got Fernando Mendoza standing back there. He's not afraid to throw an interception or two. That's a big concern. 5th in adjusted net yards per attempt. I don't see Cal going through the air to try to defeat Miami. I think they want to slow this game down. They don't want to get into a shootout. And that means Jaden Ott, because Miami, look, what did we see last game? What did Virginia Tech do? Whole lot of rootin' tootin'. Whole lot by Shaw Tootin'. And with Miami, they rank 116th in yards per successful rush, which is obviously an explosiveness metric. 86th in yards per rush, not counting sacks. And lastly, 63rd in EPA per rush allowed. I think you're going to see Jaden Ott rode hard, put away wet. He went for 63 yards last game. His current line is 70.5, and that was against Florida State, who has this is Florida State, of course. That was a 9-14 slog against the Seminoles. I think you get a much more open game script. And I think you're going to see Jaden Ott go over 70.5 yards.
I like that call because Cal's offense, the only thing that they primarily are good at is early down success rate. And that becomes from the ground game. So I think Jaden Ott's, they're going to be the primary focus on first and second downs for them. And as you said, Eric, this is across the country coming off a last-second victory. This is a total fade spot. The numbers moved in Miami's favor, which is not surprising because the books are going to want to make you think Miami's going to smack this team because they're undefeated. But I think Cal could slow it down. The total's dropped already from 56.5 down to 54.5. If it keeps getting lower, I think that's an inclination of what we're going to see, and that favors Cal in this spot. But this is just a situation at 10:30 at night for Miami to go to the West Coast. You don't want that for Cam Ward and this team. So he turned the ball over right away in that first quarter against Virginia Tech. That's something, too, that's worth watching because he could be a turnover machine. But you guys didn't know, which, Brad, this should have been you. I blame this on you. You should have brought this to our attention last week. Why did no one say Kyron Reynolds and Cam Ward were cousins?
I know. It was a great tidbit.
Yeah, we all want to lock for Virginia Tech. No one's trying to lose their cousin for Thanksgiving or Christmas coming up. Like, come on, man. What
an epic battle, right?
It really was. I like Miami a lot, but I think this is a Cal spot. So I'm gonna let the number grow out more, but I want to lock in Cal for sure.
I actually think if you're leaning Cal, like it's a great look because we've seen the nonchalant is what they want to call it play of Cam Ward, but in all reality, he's kind of careless with the ball. Has like and this is off the top of my head, like 7.4% turnover worthy pass rate, which is pretty high, right? I pulled some numbers on him and I was okay with passing that because I want him to turn some over, right? Like I want him to give them some short fields where Cal can keep this close and it remains a shootout. But I do think, it's a tough travel spot for Miami. Who's in a tough spot? Auburn. They have to travel to Georgia. They're a 24.5 point dog. Total set at 52.5. Eric, do you have any bets or leans on this game?
I have a lean. And you know what it comes down to? I had the opportunity to watch Auburn against Arkansas 2 weeks ago. And the prevailing takeaways from that game are simply 6 3rd and 10 plus plays that Auburn allowed third down conversions on, and also 4 turnovers. And that has really been the story of Auburn's season. 15 turnovers now. That is 133rd in the country at second to last in terms of the worst. And they only have created 4 on their own. So that's a minus 11 turnover margin. But if you take that away and you look at kind of how this team has performed, I mean, they've been excellent in terms of running the ball. A lot of that has to do with Peyton Thorne and obviously Jarquez Hunter, and defending the run. Both sides of this thing, 30th in EPA per rush defended, 5th in yards per carry after contact on the offensive side, right? So with them being able to be pretty strong on the line, if you could eliminate the miscues and try to not put the ball in the air with quite the same recklessness we've seen from Peyton Thorne, who's had, I think, 7 interceptions, got replaced by Hank Brown. I can't help but think that Auburn, one score game last year between Georgia and Auburn, 24.5 points. That's a big line. I think Auburn's better than they've played. If they can just keep down their interceptions and reduce the turnovers, they can easily stay within that range. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to recommend Auburn with the points.
No, that's totally cool. I'm sure Vaughn's going to have some kind of disagreement.
It's not cool, Brad. Don't be nice to him. You know it's not cool. I am literally Saturday night. I am throwing a zombie birthday party for my 3-year-old stepdaughter, and Payne Thorne's going to be in attendance as one of the zombies when Georgia's done. Like, he is going to be a dead man walking when that front seven gets to him, I think. So why Auburn played them tough last year. They lost by 7, got out to a good start. This is an Auburn team that's been at home 5 straight games, has not traveled yet. They haven't won in Georgia since Cam Newton was under center. And Georgia has a habit of getting out to quick leads on Auburn outside of last year. So I like Georgia first quarter -6.5, Georgia first half -13.5. Maybe you get a backdoor cover, Eric, but Peyton Thorne, absolutely no parts of him, Georgia, off that loss. I don't want that.
Every rose has its thorn.
When Proton said that, I literally like feverishly tried to go to my computer and like pull up my Peyton Thorne numbers, because like honestly, like Eric is kind of right. Like he hasn't been terrible, right? Like I think he's like top 40 in the country. His biggest issue is the turnovers, and
it's a big one.
My biggest issue for this team is their defense. Defensively, hey, they haven't been good. They haven't been great, but the last time they played Georgia was in Jordan Hare. Now they're playing in Athens, between the hedges there. I like Georgia to get out to an early lead. I took Georgia first half -14. You could play the -13.5 for a little bit more juice. Both are cool with me. Last time Georgia came off to a loss, specifically to Alabama, Roll Tide, they ended up beating a team by 50+ points, and that is Florida State. I actually think, there's a lot of moral victories going around for Georgia that have been kind of annoying. Like, yeah, they battled back, blah, 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 blah. But I actually think there is some kind of truth to the moral victory that Georgia can have. I think when they realize that they're not getting the push from their offensive line they want, they're not, Trevor Etienne is not running the ball with the effectiveness that he's not. They decided to go back to what was successful last season, getting the ball out quickly and making explosive plays that way. That helped them get back into the game, and I think they're going to be able to have success in doing that. You have to draw from your losses. It's not the end of the world losing a road game in this 12-team playoff format, but you still have more tough games on your schedule. You have to bounce back in a big way, because if you lose another one of those, they're going to think about this Auburn game. How did you bounce back after losing to Alabama? You invite Auburn in, and you beat them by 5 points. You beat them by 7 points. Yeah. No, you need to blow the doors off them. I think they're a better team. I think if Auburn really try to challenge that secondary, I think Starks is one of those guys who can get away with a ball, get him a nice little interception, get positive field possession. I'm on Georgia. I like the bounce back in a big way. I'm not taking the 24.5. I'm just playing it in the first half.
I like it.
You're not going to add any years, Vaughn?
I mean, Georgia's going to roll. Like, I don't know. I don't see a situation. I don't think Auburn's good. Like,
I don't either.
My ladder play, I mean, they gave that game to Oklahoma away last week. Like, that was embarrassing. But their home game, like, they lost to the 3 best teams at home, California, Arkansas, and Oklahoma now. And they got to go to Georgia. Like, it's just not a situation. And, I mean, I won't sit here and act like I've been the best capper on the show, because I've been the worst of us 3. It's no hiding it. I say it every week. But this is not a situation where I see Auburn prevailing. So if they get the full game cover, I don't care. I want the first quarter, first half, but I'm with you, Brad. I think we look at it and say, how did you respond after that Alabama beating when you were right there? You could have beat them and you gave it away at the end. And if they win by 5, they win by 10. That's not good enough for some people, especially when they still have Texas on their schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to beat them down. All right. Before we get into our ladder plays, I want to let you know this quick promo read I'm about to give you. Dominate this NFL season with a Fantasy Life Plus subscription. Get weekly rankings, start and sit advice, DFS analysis, and betting tools. Use promo code SEASON20 for 20% off. Go to fantasylife.com/rotoworld to learn more. Mr. Eric Froton. I almost added Mr. K'Ron Lynch's over 36.5 rushing yards. What's really funny is I just remember taking K'Ron Lynch last week, and we had probably the best betting moment ever where he cashes in a blowout on basically the last touch of the game. Go ahead and tell me your ladder play.
That's right. It was at 31, and he made sure on that 3rd and 1 carry, he was going to get that first down, and he did. But more importantly, in the first down, he got the cover, and that's what we're here for. But keep in mind, K'Ron Adams here. I mean, they were playing Ohio State 38-7. I mean, they were completely outclassed. All they could really do was try to just sort of salt that game away and leave and move on to Oregon. But the good news is that they're not playing Ohio State this week. They are playing Oregon. And with K'Ron Lynch-Adams against BC, 15 carries, 61 yards. Previous game from that, 15 carries, 63. Florida Atlantic, 9 for 101. And his role has only grown since that first Florida Atlantic game. I watched every carry that he had that game. And what I really like about K'Ron Lynch-Adams is he doesn't go backwards. When it comes to his rushes, you see him. He's always pushing the pile forward. The power, the strength. Like he's a dependable down in, down out guy that you can look at and say, all right, he's clearly the best we have. Because he's breaking, in terms of like his ability to break tackles, you're going to have to do it behind this Michigan offensive line. So yards after contact, 3.1, 31% broken tackle rate. That is more than twice, almost 3 times of Nate Carter's 12%. So when it comes to the backfield competition, I just think he's clearly shown himself to be the better back at a very reasonable 36.5 rushing yards. I mean, they're giving it to us again. I like that over. It will be my best bet. And in league with that, it is going to be a ladder play here. I like K'Ron Adams at 60 plus yards. You can get 2 plus 230, almost 2.5 to 1 money. And keep in mind, we saw UCLA, a much inferior running back, Tamarian Harden. He went out there and pretty much, I think he was high 50s in a game where they weren't anywhere near competing. So I'm going to go with K'Ron Adams, 60 plus 230. And then, all right, unless you want to go, Brad. I know, Brad, you can go after this one.
All right. I already touched on Nate Noel, but I'm going to take him 100 plus rushing yards at plus 265. I'm also going to take him at 110 at plus 400 and 120 at plus 550. Listen, he's just such a great back, and it just reminds me of, Missouri able to scheme up things that happened last year where you'd see Cody Schrader just run down the field for these gashing like 20, 50 yard runs. I think Noel has that capability. So I like those prices on him. If he has a big game, you absolutely want to have some money some money on it and add some money into your pocket.
Yeah, and I'll finish up. Eli Holstein, the Hebrew Hammer for Pitt. He is listed at 285.5. He was open. I think you're seeing him in the 287, 288.5 at time of publishing right now. I like the ladder we got on him there. In his first 4 games, he has cleared 300 in 3 of them. He did not clear 300 last week because they were playing Youngstown State, who they beat 73-13. It was kind of the Nard dog, Pat Narduzzi, to call off the dogs and say, all right, Eli, don't throw for 500 yards this game, but he could have if he had so chosen. Each of the past 3 games, he went over 300. Kent State, Cincinnati, West Virginia, all good teams. They're playing North Carolina today. And if there's anything we know about North Carolina's defense, is that they are very, very giving. I think we're going to see Eli Holstein go over 300 yards, which is at plus 150 right now. And if you want to get Froggy, 325 plus is plus 225.
Glad you're giving some love to those Pitt Panthers. Hell to Pitt.
Of course.
One of the saddest things I think about us not doing a week 0 or future show this year was the fact I couldn't give out Pitt over 5.5 wins. 4-0 start. I think they could beat North Carolina, Eric. So that could be 5 wins right there. Then they got Cal at home for week 6. That might be a sweet cash there. But enough bragging on my end on a bet that I didn't give out on the show. I think a good ladder play, because Brad actually hit on it earlier. Georgia, last time they came off a loss, allowed 3 points. Time before that, they allowed 11 points. Time before that, they allowed 3 points. I'm going to go ahead and try and target Georgia to win the game over Auburn by shutout. That is 10-1 odds. You could sprinkle Georgia defensive touchdown. I'm still trying to get one. That's plus 470 at a couple books. But I think, I'm going to target Georgia here, which is the last time I speak about them on the show.
Yeah, it's going to be gross. Like, I'm just really excited for Georgia to go and just destroy Auburn, because I don't like Auburn and I like money. But let's get into our Big Ten games. The first one, Iowa at number 3, Ohio State. Ohio State a 19.5-point favorite. Total set at 45.5. And I lean Ohio State over 30.5. But I on their team total, I just couldn't get to the window here. I do believe that this is not as strong of an Iowa team. But that's all I have to say on that. I know Eric has an actual play in this game. So, Mr. Froton, tell us what you like in this game.
Yeah, well, with when it comes to Iowa, we know what they like to do, and that is play defense. But you got to keep in mind that this is not the Iowa of the last 2 years. This is a Iowa secondary that has changed over a little bit. And in accordance with that, they rank 111th in passing explosiveness allowed. They rank 102nd in yards per successful dropback at 16 yards per successful dropback, 70th in adjusted completion rate. That's a problem, okay? Because we're dealing with the Ohio State Buckeyes now. You're not dealing with some of the also-rans like the Minnesotas and the Troys and the Illinois States of the world. We remember what Iowa State did and how they beat them. Yeah, it was in good shape. And then they decided to gas it up. And for whatever reason, hey, Iowa doesn't have the horses. Maybe the Cooper DeJean graduation is really affecting them, but they are not the same unit. And when you're dealing with Ohio State, you've got Jeremiah Smith, you got Emeka Egbuka, you've got obviously the running back tandem. They can beat you any way you want. What are they going to do? I don't know. Whatever they feel like doing. Passing success rate, 58%. That's third in the country. Total QBR for Walker Howard, 6th in the country. Not what you expect from a Chip Kelly team, but look, this is the Ohio State Buckeyes. This is a loaded squad. You're going to give me Emeka Egbuka, my boy, at 59.5 yards against this team? You're gonna do that for me? Well, then I'm going to take it. Okay, I'm going to take it. I'm not afraid of this Iowa secondary. Keep in mind with Book, last game, Michigan State. It's a 38-7 game. 7-11 for 96 and a touch. Previous game against Marshall, 5 for 5, 117 and a touch. Previous game before that, 5 of 8, 98 against Western Michigan. Michigan State's the first real team they've played, and he got 11 targets. When it comes to what Iowa does, they play the deep halves. They have the too high safety. They will allow you to hit those mid-range shots. They're not going to let you beat you deep. It's literally a made-for-Egbuka game with that sort of defense that Iowa likes to play. I love it. Give me Buka over 59.5.
And Will Howard's
been wide receiver core, right?
Yeah, and Will Howard's been definitely one of the most efficient 2 quarterbacks in the country this year. I mean, he's completed almost 69% of his passes, top 15 QBR. And one thing, too, Eric, that I like that play is because Will Howard, he came in as a dual threat quarterback. We expect him to help out with his legs. He really hasn't done that. Really hasn't had to. They've had leads in every game, and they've scored 38+ in every game. So, I mean, that team total over, I do like that look as a lean, Brad. I mean, the last time, this is what Iowa's trying to recreate and try to fix. History repeats themselves, right? Iowa had a bye week prior to 2022 when they faced Ohio State. They went to Columbus. They lost 54-10. This year, they have the same thing. They try to get a bye week before they go to Columbus because they know this is such a big game. It doesn't help. Ohio State checks every box. They're much better. They have the top 10 talent all across the offensive line, all receivers, running backs, everything. I agree. I think the OSU team total over 30.5 is the look, Brad. I think there are a few teams in this country that can score 30-plus points every single game against almost every single opponent, and Ohio State is one of them.
Yeah, it's God. This team is really good. They're a reason they're the betting favorite to win the national championship. They have the highest playoff odds. It's a really good team.
And I mean, Cade McNamara, he's not scaring anybody. Like, he's going to give the ball away probably too,
right? Like, so I did have this little tidbit, right? Like Caleb Johnson, is his line set at 85.5 rushing yards. Iowa 124th in rush rate over expected, right? Like, if they go down, at some point they're going to have to turn to throwing the ball. And that's when I think Ohio State really starts to lick their chops. They're like, yeah, throw the ball so we can pin our ears back and just put in the really dynamic pass rush, which is also like a little reason that I was kind of excited to take the team total there. Let's move on, though. Let's go to talk about UCLA at number 7, Penn State. Penn State, a huge 28-point favorite, total set at 46.5. Eric, take the floor and give us a player prop you like in this game.
Yeah, they have to be a 28-point favorite. We've seen nothing from this UCLA team to believe that they have anything in the tank to be able to take them. They had to sweat out a 16-13 field goal fest against Hawaii week 1. And then each of the last 3 games, Indiana, LSU, Oregon, 0% win expectancies. They were absolutely outclassed in every respect. And obviously that's a problem. You got Penn State coming to town. But what I do like, and I've been very over heavy here, as we've kind of seen. I've been quite bullish. There's been no Grinch Froton here for this show, but I gotta throw a little cold water on one particular thing. I'm gonna go with Tyler Warren under 52.5 receiving yards. We've heard a lot about Tyler Warren. He's really got some great press, and deservedly so. Just another in a long line of talented Penn State tight ends. But look, 52.5 receiving yards for a tight end is a biblical number. I mean, you look at what he's done so far against West Virginia, 34-12. 3 catches on 3 targets, 30 yards and a touch. Fine. The one outlier in what we're getting this 52.5 off of is his Bowling Green performance. Remember the Bowling Green game, 34-27. He cut 8 of 8 for 146 yards, which is just a massive outlier for any tight end. Nobody does that. And then for the next 2 games, Kent State, 5 of 7 for 50 and a touch. But what we've seen Penn State start doing is giving Warren carries. So he's got like the Jalen Samuels. Remember him from NC State back in the day, and Pittsburgh, Vaughn. He would get those tight end carries, and that's what we've seen from Warren. Got a carry against Kent State for 16 yards. Last week, gets Illinois. 2 carries, 13 yards, and a 3-yard touchdown for Tyler Warren. So with him against Illinois going 4 of 7 for 34 yards, Kent going 5 of 7 for 50, and getting those carries, he's being used in different ways by new offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki. And when it comes to who is clearly the linchpin of your offensive attack, they're not going to bother trotting him out in the second half when they're crushing a inept UCLA team. You're going to see Tyler Warren on ice early. He'll get his time, but 53.5 receiving yards. All right, I need to see it. 52.5, excuse me. I need to see him clear that 52.5 mark. I don't think they need to press him to where he does.
I'm double dipping in this game, and I'm double dipping on the running backs because Penn State's averaging 251 rush yards per game. They're ripping off 5.8 yards per carry. I'm taking Katron Allen over 67.5 rush yards. Nick Singleton over 86.5. I'm not going crazy and putting 2 units in this game. What I'm doing is I'm putting a half a unit on each, right? They're both averaging about 13 yards per carry. Katron Allen, 2 games back to back where he's had at least 100 yards. Nick Singleton, 100 yards in his first 2 games and 80 plus in every game. This is against a UCLA team who stinks against the run, 107 rush yards per game, 102nd in defensive success rate against the run. Penn State still going to want to run the ball, and I think they're going to have a ton of success doing it. So I'm taking their 2 bell cow backs, Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, to both go over their totals.
Yeah, I think Penn State is going to bruise UCLA. Like you guys spoke on, I mean, Penn State has a huge advantage here from being at home every single game from September 7th to October whatever they play this weekend, 4th or 5th. They get a big advantage there. And for UCLA, I mean, the last 4 weeks, they hosted Indiana, absolutely drilled them. I was so wrong on that game. They flew to Baton Rouge after that game, barely covered, but lost that game by 17. And they flew back home to host Oregon, got smacked up, and now they get to go to College Park in my home state of Pennsylvania for a 9 a.m. California kickoff at 12 p.m. Eastern. It's just a not good situation for UCLA. There's nothing that's made you think they can cover 4 touchdowns against Penn State at all this season. Then add in all that stuff, I still don't think it. So maybe they get a backdoor cover, but I looked at Penn State early, guys. First quarter, first half. The books are protecting themselves. MGM, DK, FanDuel, all these guys are throwing out -7.5 for Penn State in the first quarter, -14.5 for the first half, because they want to make sure you don't get that key number, because Penn State likely will lead by at least a touchdown or 2. So my only angles are all for plus money in this game, and they're not the best numbers because the books are protecting themselves for a smackdown here.
Yeah, just such a tough spot for a UCLA team. UCLA team, I want to add this. They run a lot of nickel, right? I think running against nickel is really successful. You see a lot of success, which kind of helps. It's against a Penn State team who's going to run the ball a ton. I think run the ball with a ton of success here. Let's move to the next game. Number 23, Indiana, 13.5 point favorite against Northwestern. 41.5 is the total. I think I'm the only person with a bet on this, so I'll take the first stab at what I like. I like Indiana -13.5. Kirk Cignetti, Curtis Rourke. I wrote match made in heaven in my notes. It's Curtis Rourke, number 9th in PFF grade for quarterbacks, by the way, against Mike Wright. I was looking at Curtis Rourke's stats. I was really shocked, right? Like, 1,300 yards, 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 90.2 QBR, 3rd in the country. But it gets better, right? Looking at their PFF numbers, big time throw percentage 4.1, which massively clears Mike Wright at 1.37. Passer rating under pressure. Listen to this difference. 108.4 for Curtis Rourke, 26.1 for Mr. Mike Wright. I think that this is going to be an absolute slacking. I'm really liking this Indiana team. They play with pace. They score. They are really good on 1st and 2nd down, which makes life a little bit easier against a Northwestern team who's still kind of reeling. Yeah, they're a little bit better defensively than they are offensively, but I don't think their defense is good enough to hold this Indiana team at bay. For me, 13.5 was more than enough for meat on the bones for me to get some value in this.
Yeah, I lean Indiana here too a lot. I mean, Mike Wright, if he does come back here for Northwestern, and starts this game, that might give them some juice. They're coming off a bye week, so they need to shake it up. I mean, Jack Losh has been real bad for them. 5 points against Washington. Northwestern really hasn't done anything offensively, Brad and Eric. I mean, they've averaged 12.6 points per game against the FBS opponents. They haven't passed more than 20, only on Eastern Illinois. And Indiana, we spoke on Big Cignetti's my guy, like I said multiple times here. I do like him. I should have been betting him all season. My season wouldn't be as bad if I was. This guy's an ATS machine so far. But nothing in Northwestern's offense scares you here against Indiana. Then you got Cignetti walking around with quotes like, "It's simple, I win, Google me." Like, he's selling everything about this franchise, or everything about this school to these recruits. And people are getting excited about Indiana Hoosiers football again. It's a basketball school, but now it's looking like a football school. They haven't been 5-0 in 57 years. He came in and did that right away. So, I like Indiana. I think they continue to roll in this game.
Yeah, with Indiana, I mean, as we had kind of alluded to there with Rourke, they rank 1st nationally in passing success rate, 63.1%. It's obscene. 2nd in EPA per dropback. I mean, I could go up and down the list, but we're talking about an elite passing offense. And Northwestern on the other side, not so much on any front. They're one of the absolute apex worst passing teams in the country. I think they rank dead last in explosiveness, 120th in success rate. They're probably the worst passing P4 team in the country. And then on the other side, defensively, 62.3% completion rate, 44% passing success rate allowed. That's 106th nationally. They allow teams to dink and dunk them, is what they kind of do. We don't have a line on Curtis Rourke yet, but I'm very curious to see where they put his passing yardage, and I'll be watching. I'm leaning Indiana. I mean, they're going to win. They've been awesome so far.
Yeah.
It's hard not to take them.
I imagine you're taking that over. What would you set your projection? Like, what number would you be like, I don't want to play it anymore for Rourke?
I think we'll still get a reasonable number under 250, which is pretty appealing for me. So, I mean, hold on, let me see in terms of what.
I mean, with a
the
13.5
actual
spread,
one.
you'd expect it can't be too high.
Yeah, like he went for 359 against Maryland last game, 258 UNC Charlotte, 307 against UCLA. I mean, it's hard to set his number too low, even though Northwestern does want to control the clock. It's David Braun as the head coach, former defensive coordinator. I think you've got to probably look at 260 plus is what I think it'll probably be set at, and I like it at that.
Okay. It's reasonable enough. I'm going to keep my eye out because, anytime I get a chance to tail Mr. Froton, I take it. Let's talk about a game where I'm going to be tailing you because I see that you have 1, 2, 3 bets in it. That's number 10, Michigan, traveling to Washington. Washington, a 2.5-point favorite. Total set at 41.5. This game is on NBC. Eric, you kick things off because you came with a big stake of plays.
We got a lot to deal with here. I guess I'll start with the Washington side. With that Washington offense, we know what they want to do. It's our friend, Mr. Fish, has gone from Arizona to there, and with Will Rogers sort of implementing a very similar system to what he used over there at Mississippi State under Mike Leach. They're slinging the ball around a little bit, and the one who is the biggest beneficiary has been Denzel Boston, obviously on the outside. But for betting purposes, we've got Giles Jackson, the slot receiver, a senior. He's listed at 4 receptions, not 4.5. He's listed at 4. And that's important because last week against Rutgers, 10 targets, catches 7 for 59. Previous game against Northwestern, a 24-5, just bowling shoe ugly game. 5, really, Northwestern? Only gets 3 catches for 16 yards. But previous 3 games before that, Wazoo, 8 of 8 for 162. Eastern Michigan, 6 of 6 for 66. All 6s. And then Weber State, 10 of 10 for 98. He literally didn't have a pass thrown to him. 24 straight passes to start the season. He didn't miss 1. So in terms of the volume, it's just been amazing. He's gone 4 out of 5. He hasn't just beaten 4. He's beaten 6 receptions in 4 out of 5 games. And with them playing and having to throw the ball, they're not going to be able to march the ball on Michigan. You're going to have to do those quick, short precision passes. If there's anything that Michigan's been victimized by a little bit, it's been the fact that their slot corner, they have not been able to replace the Mike Sandra still, who was drafted, I believe, in the 3rd round, 2nd round last year. They haven't really been able to replace him in the same manner. 67th in completion rate, 60th in EPA per dropback for Michigan. I think you're going to see Washington be able to hit Mr. Giles Jackson more than 4 times. I think it's a great deal. I'm also going to go to Colston Loveland, who, yep, I know it was a different quarterback. I know that we have Alex Orji in there, but his return from injury last week, he did manage to bring in 40 yards receiving, okay? That's a big deal. 4 out of 5 for 41 yards. Previous game that he had played against Arkansas State, he got hurt, but he still had 3 catches for 30 yards in that. And then the previous 2, 8 for 70, 8 for 87. With him getting at least 5 targets, catching 41 yards, he is the only thing they can do. You're going to list him at 30 yards against Washington this week, and will be a much more, I think you'll see a little bit more passing. You'll have to a little. I think Washington can keep this game a little bit close like Minnesota did. I'm not impressed with this Michigan offense. I think they have to throw 30.5 yards for Colston Loveland. Easy call. And lastly, bah humbug after 2 overs. Donovan Edwards, we've seen him completely marginalized by the Khalil Mullings revival.
Mm-hmm.
Saw Mullings get over 20 carries last game. Unfortunately, Donovan Edwards, 9 carries, 34 yards against Minnesota. Now they're going up against Washington. I just think that passing game script, if you look at what he did and where he lined up, he was lined up on more passing downs than he was on running downs. He's kind of become the nominal satellite back. I don't think he gets enough to hit the 53.5 rushing yards mark. I'm going under Donovan Edwards.
Has Alex Orji's passing yard line hit 100 yet?
No, I think it's 91.5.
No, yeah.
He went over last week, over 81.5, cashed 86. Yeah, they're very one-dimensional right now. And that's interesting. You said Donovan Edwards getting more receiving snaps based on passing plays rather than be on the field for running plays. Really good statistic there to back the under, too. So I like that a lot. Khalil Mullings obviously cashed in for Brad last week. Dude's an absolute animal.
Nice.
So I think that he continues to own that backfield, and Orji gets a little more comfortable. We see some more passes, some more play action this week. But really, it's that Michigan defense. Will Rogers has been great for Washington, but I still don't believe in this Huskies team. Like, they literally were so unimpressive against Rutgers. Like, Scarlet Knights gave them chances to hang around to win that game. They could not do that. And for Michigan, this situation where they're not really in this. I mean, not in a situation like this very often, I should say. They've only been a road underdog twice since 2020. They covered and won both those games by 27 plus 27 cover margin, and the under cash both. Those are both the angles I'd look at here. Now, I'm not saying Michigan's going to be a college football playoff team. I still don't believe that. But I think that this is a situation where the look-ahead line, Brad, was Michigan minus 9.5 preseason, and now it's Washington minus 3. I understand Michigan's not as good as we thought they are, but Washington's not this good to be laying 3 points against Michigan, in my opinion. Revenge spot for the national championship, you could say that, sure. This is an entirely new staff and a lot of new players, not the same team at all. So I still like Michigan here. I take them plus 3 if they get to that point, and I like the under 2.
Yeah, I thought Washington kind of struggled with the defense from Rutgers. Not the same defense that they're going to be playing against Michigan. Much more talented, much harder to throw the ball on. So I can't see them having a ton of success. Let's go over into our final Big Ten game here. Number 11, USC traveling to Minnesota. USC, an 8.5-point favorite. Total set at 51.5. I felt like I was robbed last week. I was on Wisconsin team total under, and I was on Woody Marks rushing over. Neither of those hit. Both of them should have because they had a negative game script early. I don't even want to touch this USC team because I can't kind of get out of my own way. I think Minnesota's really underrated too. But even if you look at their numbers, the numbers don't say so. Defensively, they're good, 20th in the country in success rate, and EPA margin's pretty solid, around 65. But good against throwing quarterbacks, which I don't know. Something's got to break. Something's got to give. Kick things off, Froton, with a play that you like.
Yeah, with Minnesota, there's one thing that they do exceptionally well, and there's nothing else that they do exceptionally well, and that is pass defense. 5th in passing success rate, 1st in yards per drop back, 2nd in EPA per drop back, 1st in suppressing passing explosiveness. I mean, it's up and down the line. They make you run the ball on them, and fortunately, you can. They rank 109th in yards after contact, not good in terms of their tackling. 118th in terms of stuff rate. That's rushes of 0 or less yards. So you're constantly moving forward on them. 68th in yards per successful rush, and then 65th in EPA per rush. So with that, drastic a dichotomy between their pass defense that is absolutely elite, and then a mediocre humdrum sort of a rush defense. I don't think it's going to take much for head coach Lincoln Riley to say, okay, Jacavius Martz, let's use the same sort of a script we had against Michigan. He ran 13 times for 100 yards against Michigan in that game. Looked incredible. Got 10 targets, was the centerpiece of that game. And then last week against Wisconsin, 19 carries, only got 63 yards, but that's against a better Wisconsin run defense. I think you see close to that 20 carries in that 17 to 20 mark again. And I think he's going to be able to do that against this Minnesota rush defense. I think he's going to be able to clear the 69.5 mark he's currently lined at.
Man, I think all the sharps are lining up on Minnesota, Brad. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with it. We saw, this was a Wisconsin team that was able to basically have their way with them in the first half, scoring 21 points last week. USC, I said that what I wanted to see change over the offseason was get better at tackling. Still haven't quite seen that. And maybe they're not as good as we thought they were because we watch LSU and LSU's not as good as we thought they were. It's hard to use the transitive property in football, but that's the only thing we can get kind of information on is how they perform against other teams. Man, Minnesota's just a tough bunch. Like beating them by 10 is not going to be easy. By 9, you know.
I wish we still had the betting tool trend app where I could tell you exactly what teams do at numbers, because I feel like an 8.5 point favorite is not a favorable number to be backing at all. Like those teams have to have 45 or 50% cover rates or something like that. In my head, not saying that is a fact whatsoever, but I think we see a weird number like this because of USC's travel spot. I mean, they played Utah State at home, went to Michigan, came back to California to play Wisconsin. Now they're going back to Minnesota. Terrible spot to be backing this team, especially a Minnesota team that does not quit. So I like the Gophers, 8.5. I like them the first half more, though, plus 6.5, but may not get involved with this game. USC, very tricky to be betting.
Very, very tricky. Listen, it's an inter-conference showdown Sunday night in week 5. Catch Dak Prescott and the Cowboys take on TJ Watt in the vaunted Steelers defense in Pittsburgh. Coverage kicks off at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
It is time for the drumroll People's Parlay. Right now, we are up 4.9 units. I know my play stunk, so I'm going to call a spade a spade. It was god awful. I'll kick things off because I already talked about mine. My leg, Indiana minus 13.5 against Northwestern. Vaughn, go ahead with your leg.
I'm rolling with Georgia first quarter minus 6.5, getting extra spicy on us. They actually have tied Auburn 3 straight years in the first quarter, and I think this is the year it finally breaks. So I like Georgia by 7 in the first quarter.
I got 2 losses this year, and both of them are games that won under spreads of 3. So I should have taken the money line, and I would be 5-0 undefeated on my plays. Mm-hmm. If only. I will not make that same mistake this time. Virginia, money line over Boston College. I just think that team has gotten so lucky in so many ways. They're always in these close games and just barely somehow squeaking out against Michigan State, against Western Kentucky, 21-20 last game. Like, they've got 9 lives, this Bill O'Brien-led Boston College team. I think the show's over. Virginia comes and romps them.
Like that. $10 pays out what? $49 this time? $49.60?
$4.96. Not bad. It's hard because I feel like I'm in this do I want to take the value, take a 14.5 and then get it up a little bit, or do I want to take a money line and that's minus 150 just to cash? That's the funny thing about parlays, right? But we say straights pay the bills, parlays are just for fun. So the People's Parlay, I'll run through it real quick. Virginia money line over Boston College, Indiana minus 13.5 at Northwestern, and Georgia first quarter money line. Once again, $10 pays $49.60. Let's go over to our favorite bets of the week. I'll kick things off. I'll be quick with this one. I'm going to go Rutgers plus 7.5. I know we're on the opposite sides there, Vaughn, but I just think the defense of Rutgers is going to be really nice. It's also going to be a really windy game, which I think plays into better hands of Rutgers because better rushing attack. I'm on Clemson minus 13.5. Backup quarterback for Florida State. Doesn't even matter who was starting at quarterback. It's going to be a bloodbath. And I'm on Eli Holstein over 287.5 pass yards. Mr. Froton already touched on most of the good points, but I'm going to add one more. Dude's a Bama transfer, and Bama won last week, so he's got a lot of vibes going with him. Go ahead through your list, Eric.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jaquindon Jackson, running back, Arkansas. He went for 101 against Arkansas Pine Bluff, 249 Oklahoma State, 147 against UAB, but then reality rolls in, and even though he had 22 carries against Auburn, 75 yards, which would put him under, and then against Texas A&M last week in a 21-17 loss, 10 carries, 37 yards. That's a problem for me because they're playing Tennessee this week. And Tennessee will be scoring points. Not worried about that in Arkansas. And you're not going to get a script where you're going to be looking to hand off 22 times. Last game, when they were trailing against Texas A&M, he had 5 targets, Jaquindon Jackson. I think you see a similar sort of an approach because I'll tell you what they're not going to do. You're not going to run the ball on the Tennessee Volunteers, okay? That's just simply not what they are built to do. In terms of people obviously want to talk about Nico, but dude, their defense, first overall in rushing success rate, 18% rushing success rate allowed. That's ridiculous. 2.1 yards per carry with no sacks involved. First in EPA per rush against, first in yards per carry before contact. The best part about the yards per carry before contact, minus 0.9 yards before contact. They're being met 1 yard in the backfield on average for their carries. With Tennessee, good luck running the ball up the middle on this stout Tennessee defense. Give me the hard under on Jaquindon Jackson. I am also going to go with, as mentioned, Eli Holstein as well. We both love Eli Holstein, and when we put that out, that's one of my favorite bets, but it's also in the latter place.
Yeah, we told you before the show, Eric, not to yell too loud because you're a mic situation producer. Adam's saying, "Sing it, yell it from the mountaintops, go Bulls." So yeah, make sure you get that one in there. I love Tennessee too this year, though. I'm going out west to a game that I don't think a lot of people are going to be betting: Oregon State versus Colorado State. Brad's shaking his head profusely. Oh yeah, it's an ugly game. But listen, hear me out, people. I'm trying to course correct here. Both these teams are coming off bye weeks. You know what that means? The under is in play here. Under 47.5 is a good play for me. Colorado State's offense, they cannot throw whatsoever. I mean, they're averaging like 158 passing yards per game. Eric, remember that Braden Nikolai Fauci guy you put a bet on and he didn't even come close? That guy can't throw at all. And Oregon State,
because they didn't have Torrey Horton either. I mean, it's hard to throw when you don't have.
They could get Torrey Holt. It didn't matter, bro. It did not matter in that game. But I'll say this is my last thing. I like Oregon State on the spread as well. I'm going to wait for a -10, though. It's tracked down from 12 to 11. Oregon State at home, 18-3 on the money line, 17-4 against the spread since 2021. They are one of the best covering teams at home, and I don't like Colorado State, so give me the Beavers on the spread and the under.
Those are our bets. Let's get into our best bets.
The best ones.
Best ones. My favorite one, Donovan Smith. I'll admittedly say this number is probably going to be closer to 20.5 as opposed to the 18.5 I bet it at. 20.5 for Donovan Smith, quarterback from Houston. And they're playing against TCU. His number's low because, let's be honest, he's been sacked 14 times. He's lost 102 yards in the sacks, but he's gotten better. I mean, the offensive line has improved game over game since the first part of the season. TCU, let's talk about the quarterbacks they've played. And these aren't like blazing speed, I'm going to run every single play quarterbacks, but quarterbacks with wheels, similar to Mr. Donovan Smith. Ashton Daniels, 89 yards. KJ Jefferson, 46 yards. And Kevin Jennings, 41 yards. Donovan Smith's hit this over in his last 3 as well, mind you. I'm really excited for this bet because of the fact that he looks like he's not trusting himself throwing the ball, and he has those opportunities to just run and take off and get the first as opposed to like forcing it down the field. that helps with rushing props. I'm 4-1 in my best bets, and I'm hoping to make it 5-1 after this week. Eric, give me your best bet.
Yeah, we already talked about it. I don't have to get into too in depth, but Kayron Adams, Michigan State. I like him at the 36.5 line. I think it's very conservative and well within reach. So I'm going to go with Mr. Adams.
You guys know that that meme from Grand Theft Auto where it's like, oh shoot, here we go again. And it's got the guy walking down the street in the tank top. That's me when my alarm went off, said Navy versus Air Force plays on Saturday. And I was like, I guess I know what we're doing. Yeah, under 35.5. It is the routine every year. Now I'll say this one's actually the most scary. Because Navy's offense has been
It's been good. Yeah.
But they played Bucknell, Temple, Memphis, and UAB. Now I'll give them 3 out of the 4. Or I'll give them 1 out of the 4. And that's Memphis there. I don't think the other 3 are that sustaining to be thinking this is a good offense yet. This is also their first back-to-back road game of the season. But we know Air Force's offense is absolutely abysmal. They have not surpassed 19 points in any game this season. In the last 3 meetings between Navy and Air Force, 23 points, 23 points, and 26 points. So I'm going to absolutely hold my nose, gentlemen, and try and win another under in the service academies. Under 35.5 is my best bet for the show. And I'll give you this tidbit. Navy only plays 2 more home games over the last 9 regular season games this year. They got a bunch of road and neutral field games. So honestly, Navy looks good now, but they're going to look real bad in a few weeks. So get ready to start fading the midshipmen.
Come on now. These guys, they're service members. These guys get deployed on a boat for 6 months at a time.
Hey,
they're not worried about a little hat travel.
All right, I'm an Army Black Knights fan. Okay, go Army.
I think Navy smokes Air Force. Isn't that game? Is it like 7.5? The spread?
It's 10 actually.
And
Navy hasn't won. And Navy hasn't won in Colorado Springs since 2012. So
waiting to happen.
They won.
Listen, boys, this was fun. Everyone tuning in, listen, thank you guys as well. Make sure you check out NBCsports.com for more help with your wagers. Smash the like button, subscribe, download, and rate the podcast. For Eric Froton and Vaughn Delzell, I'm Brad Thomas, and I want to give a special thanks to our producers. Take care.